Good morning, everyone. My name is Edwin David James Aduca, and this is my report for today. So, Module 1, Understanding Learning. Lesson 1, Learning Center Theories of Learning. So, why do we need to study the theories of learning? So, as a teacher, introduction, understanding the learner as a center of educative process is essential to the aspiring teacher. So, we need to understand the nature of learning. We need to understand um, how the student or the learners learn. So, to be able to ask of how we're going to approach them, of how uh, what 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 kind of approach we're going to use, or what kind of strategy we're going to put in our class. So that is the importance. Okay, what is learning? When we hear the word learning, the first thing that comes in our mind is studying the subject, like mathematics, science, and language in school. But in the broader sense, learning can just acquire inside the classroom. Every day of our lives, people can learn in different places or condition, various place and condition. For the start, learning is generally defined as any change in the behavior of the learner. The change can be delivered or unintentional, for better or for worse, correct or incorrect. The unconscious or unconscious. So, Mayer 2011 and Shonchak 2012 in Woolfolk 2013. So this is another definition of learning. Learning is a process that brings together personal and environmental experiences and influence for acquiring, enriching, or modifying one knowledge, skills, values, attitude, behavior, and word of use. So education. Born Byrne 1999. So according to him, he defined learning as a relatively permanent change in the behavior with behavior, including both observable activity and internal processes such as thinking, attitude, and emotion. So for Sontrak 2012, he defined learning as a relatively permanent influence on behavior, knowledge, and thinking skills that comes about through experience. So one of his example is there's a child. For example, there's a child who can't able to operate the computer, but because of the experience, he is able now to do or to operate the computer, because of experience. But not all the people can do or human can do is brought by experience. For example, blinking the eyes, swallowing, um, and the like. So yeah, the the learning is brought by experience. That is according to Santra. Next, Folk 2016 rather. Learning occurs when experience includes practices, causes a relatively permanent change in an individual knowledge, behavior, or potential for behavior. So, for example, um, you keep practicing this behavior. So, so if you keep that, that is learning. So, learning from practicing. So, Orm Rud naman, for him, 2015, he defined learning as a long-term change in mental representation and association as a result of experience. So, for example, you experience a problem, and that changes your mental representation, and that is learning. And that is learning also. So learning also defined as any relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of practice and experience. Next, types of learning. So what is the types of learning? Okay, first, motor learning. So from the word itself, motor, it includes physical activity. So it is a form of activity or learning for one to maintain and go through daily life activities. For example, um, walking, running, climbing, what else? Dancing or etc. No, includes physical. Okay. Second, verbal learning. So from the word itself, verbal, it includes spoken. So it involves the use of spoken language. Excuse me. As well as the communication device use signs, pictures, symbol, words, figures, sounds are tools used in such activity. So concept learning, um, form of learning that requires the use of higher order mental processes. So, okay, processes like thinking, reasoning, and analyzing. It involves two processes, abstraction and generalization. So what is abstraction? So abstraction, it said, the quality of dealing with ideas rather than events. So that is abstraction. Generalization naman, a statement of concept obtained by influence from specific cases. Okay, so that is concept learning. Okay, let's proceed. Fourth, discrimination learning. So it is learning to differentiate between stimuli and responding appropriately to this stimuli. So stimuli, it is human can do or able to do. That is stimuli. Okay, let's proceed. Learning principle, it is learning principles related to science, mathematics, grammar, and the like. So example of this is learning principle, formulas, laws, association, correlation, and the like, and other. And there's more. Okay, problem solving from the word itself. This is a higher order thinking processes. So maybe the student or the teacher will give the situation wherein the student will think, you know, what to do or how to solve that problem. So yeah. Okay, attitude learning. Attitude is a predisposition which determines and predict behavior. Learns attributes or attitude influence one's behavior towards people, object, things, or ideas. So we can acquire or learn the attitude towards the things. So I remember I watched way back 2000, I don't know, I can't recall the exact day. But I watched one documentary wherein the child acquire or um, nakuha niya yung ugali ng cartoon character. So because of that cartoon character, he became a killer. So that is a sad learning. So he become a bad influence to a child. So beware of, you know, what are we going to watch for our children or in your child. Nature of theories of learning. So a theory or a learning theory is an organized set of principles explaining how individuals acquire, retain, and recall knowledge. Learning theories are trying to explain how people learn and why they learn. So learner-centered is a perspective that focuses on individuals' learner, their heredity, experiences, perspective, background, talent, interest, capabilities, and the needs with a focus on learning. So, it's in the learner-centered, the teacher is not the center, but a learner. So, they are the one who will, you know, speak rather than the teacher. So the teacher will going to facilitate the learners, while the learners, they are they are um, exploring their knowledge or what do you call this? Finding their knowledge. So they are the one who will find that learning. Okay, so the teacher will facilitate. cognitive and metacognitive factor. So, nature of learning processes. Learning of complex subject matter is most effective when it is an intentional processes of constructing meaning from information and experience. Goals of the learning process. The successful learning over time with support and guidance can create meaningful, coherent representation of knowledge. Construction of knowledge. The learner can rely or relay new information in meaningful ways. So I explained it earlier. Strategic thinking, the learner can create and use a repertoire of thinking and reasoning strategies to achieve complex goals. Thinking about thinking. So this is for fifth. Higher order strategies for selecting and motivating or monitoring mental operations facilitate, create, and critical thinking. Context of learning. Learning is influenced by inverted mental factors, including culture, technology, and instructional practices. Motivational and effective factors. Okay, motivational emotional influence in learning. What, and how much is learned in influence by the learner's level of motivation. So, how much or how gaano sila natuto? Okay, intrinsic motivation to learn. They need assist stimulated by tasks of optimal novelty and difficulty relevant to personal interest and providing for personal choice and control. Effect of motivation on effort. Acquisition of complex knowledge and skills requires extended learner effort and guidance practice rather. Okay. Ito na yung mga titignan. Developmental and social factors. So, developmental influence on learning. As individuals develop, they encounter different opportunities and experience as well as constraints for knowledge. Okay, social influence on learning. Learning is influenced by social interaction, interpersonal relation, and communication with others. So, yeah, we can learn from one another. So, if one person he experienced that and he shares that to you, that is interaction. So you learn from his experience, from his story. So that is learning also. Individual differences factors. So individuals differences in learning. Learning have different strategies, okay, approach and capabilities for learner that are a function of prior experience and heredity. Learning and diversity. Learning is the most effective when differences in learners' linguistic, social, and cultural background are taken into account. Standard and assessment. Setting appropriately high and challenging standard and assessing the learners and learning processes or progress, including diagnostic and outcome assessment, are integral parts of the learner's processes. Okay. Sunstruck 2011, according to him, he identifies some learner-centered instruction strategies which address learners' need. They are, okay, first, problem-based learning. This is strategy emphasize real-life problem solving. So the teacher may give a real-life situation. So it exposes learners to authentic life problem solving that they met in their lives. The teacher guides and monitors the learner's problem solving effort. Okay. Essential question. Essential question of learners, which complex or perplex rather them. This is followed by other question, which motivated student to explore the question and look for the answer. Okay, essential question. Okay, the student can now okay, observe or what do you call this? Explore the question, and they are the one who who will look for the answer in that situation or that problem. Okay, discovery learning. This approach is in conscious to direct instructional approach. Features create the solution for student, explorer, and figure out things for themselves. So yeah, the student is the one who will, you know, going to discover from themselves, and by that they learn. Theories of learning. So what is the theories of learning? First, behaviorism is the word view that assume the learners is essential passive, responding to the environment stimuli. This perspective emerged in early 90s. So through the research effort of Ivan Pavlov and Edward Thorndike, who made more objective studies about learning as opposed to the students on learning, which relied heavily on introspection. Introspection. Okay. Okay. Behaviorist. Okay, knowledge is a report of behavior responses to environmental stimuli. Okay, passive observation, absorption rather of a predefined body of knowledge by the learner, promoted by repetition and positive reinforcement. So behaviorist it is learned through repetition or practice. So they learn uh, because of practice. Okay, cognitive or cognitive constructivism. Cognitism rather. The cognitism the cognitism revolution in the late 1950s to 1960s replaced behaviorists as the dominant paradigm for the learning. The human mind is seen as a black box, and it is necessarily to open it for a better understanding of how people learn. Mental processes such as memory, knowing, solving problem, reasoning, and other such processes need to be explored. People are seen not as program being that simply responds to environment stimuli as is propounded and in behaviorism. So in behaviorism, um, okay, the human being is the responses to the stimuli of environment. So in cognitive, it is not. Social constructivism as a worldview or paradigm that emerged in the 1970s and 1980s. It positive that learning is an active constructive process. The learner himself construct knowledge. People actively construct or create their own representation of objective reality. The theory is about preparing the individual to solve problem. Thus, the individual needs to have a wide and significant base of knowledge upon which to create and interpret ideas. It may be said that the result may not be the same because the learners create their own ideas and thus may be unique to the individual's person. So maybe individual's person. Social learning theories. Okay, it was exposed by Albert Bandura, who worked with both cognitive and behaviorism or behaviorist framework that embrace attentional memory and motivation. Okay, this theory suggests that people learn within a social context and that learning is facilitated through concepts like modeling, observational learning, and imitation. Social constructivism. In the late 20th century, the constructivist view of learning was further changed by the perspective of situated and learning. Okay. It emphasized the significant role of context, particularly social interaction, in learning. Experiential learning. Carl Roger is an influential proponent of this theory, suggested that experiential learning is self-initiated. So this is a self-initiated. Learning, as people have a natural inclination to learn, and they learn if they are fully involved in the learning process. Let's pause it. Multiple intelligence, or MI. This theory changes the assumption in many learning theories that learning is a universal human processes that all individuals experience according to the same principle. Howard Gardner's theories of intelligence challenge the understanding that intelligence are dominated by a single um, general ability. Situated learning theory and community of practice. Many of the learners' idea earlier presented. These concepts were developed by Jane Liv and Etienne Winger. Situated learning recognize that there is no learning that is not situated. So, okay, there is no learning that not situated. So, it means that every learning or every part of learning or everything that you have learned is situated. Okay, it emphasizes the relation and refo character of knowledge and learning as well as the engaged nature of learning activity for the individual involved. 21st century learning skills. The study or explorations of 21st century learning are skills emerge for the concerns about transforming the goals and dealing practice of learning to meet the new demand about transforming the goals. The daily practice of learning to meet the new demand of the 21st century, characterized as knowledge and technology driven. Okay, so it involves the learning through social media or the learning through technology. So, okay. So, in this day, 21st century learning is not about or it's not longer the material. No, you need to prepare a material, but we can now all learn in social or technology. So, like now, in the day of pandemic, COVID-19, we are all learned um, by or through technology. Okay, that is done.